Good morning and welcome to Talking Point on WESN, the content capital. My name is Keaton Shaw. Beautiful day in TNT. The traffic is, I think every morning for the next couple of weeks I'm going to appreciate the fact that there's very little traffic. Minus this morning though, because Trackert Road actually last night, it seems they've continued their paving works. So they've actually scraped the road of the pitch that was laid before, which is causing traffic to back up. There's quite a congestion. But hopefully when that is fixed very, very soon, and I hope by tonight, things will ease up once more. Nevertheless, if you're with us this morning, thank you very much for joining us on the program once more. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And alongside me is my sitting slash standing slash however you'd like to put it. He is a good friend and he is not the co-host, he's the co-host of Talking Point right now. He's the host of One on One here on WESN. That is Mr. Kemuel Pascal. Good morning, Kemuel.
Good morning, Keaton, and good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Always a pleasure to be here with you all on this Tuesday morning.
You have to think twice about it. Feels like a Monday, doesn't it? Good morning, Kemuel. Good to have you once more. First of all, Kemuel, let's start off. We will be joined by our guest after the first break to speak about the Central Bank Stability Report 2021. In terms of stability, quite an interesting term to use considering the nature of the report.
Yes.
But on to some other news, and this is in relation to what took place at the San Fernando General Hospital yesterday, in which a 26-year-old individual, whom was actually, interestingly, there for a job interview, discovered a newborn baby girl tied in a garbage bag in one of the corridors of the hospital. Now, he indicated that he observed a bag in one of the corridors. It was not tied, but just twisted at the top. He noticed some movement coming from within the bag and heard noises, after which he opened the bag. He discovered the child and then alerted the nurses. He's estimating that the child is only a couple of weeks old.
That's certainly what we've heard, and as you mentioned, he said that he saw the bag moving a bit and a bit of noise, and so he decided to investigate as to what was within the bag, the contents rather, and it was at that particular time he noticed it was a baby within the bag. I'm not sure if they said it's a girl or a boy as yet.
Well, reports indicate that it's a girl.
It's a girl.
But we're still waiting from the authority. The Southwest Regional Health Authority has indicated that an investigation has been launched and the baby is now receiving urgent medical attention as well as being cared for. A couple of things, actually a lot of things. First of all, thank you very much to the individual who found the baby.
Yes, that's very important.
Says he doesn't consider himself a hero, but I understand that in a public hospital, even in a private hospital, things can be very, very busy. There are arguments,
especially during visiting hours.
Exactly,
yes.
And there are arguments that many of them are understaffed, they're overworked. All right, but don't you think that this is something that should have been picked up on sooner? I mean, we don't have no definitive timeline of when the bag was placed there and when the infant girl was discovered. That's where the investigations will determine. But this should have been picked up sooner, most likely by hospital staff.
Well, I guess when they do their investigation, they will probably see that, I'm guessing the premises does have cameras, so they'll be able to see how long this particular bag was dumped there and who was the person that would have dumped the bag, because I expect that the premises does in fact have cameras. But it's certainly commendable on the part of the individual that he would have been able to, that he found this particular bag. I'm not sure if it's on a ward or if it's just in a regular accident and emergency setting, so that will determine a lot of things, whether or not the person had the baby there and discarded the baby in the bin upon leaving, or whatever is the case, or if they came there to dump the baby. But I think they did say that there was a note in the bag. Yeah.
Well, the note from the mother was asking the states to look after the child, as she didn't have the means to look after the child. First of all, before I get on that point, what you said there about the premises having cameras, yes, we're hoping that the premises has cameras that are working. Oftentimes, in many of these public institutions, they have the facility that is unoperational. So we're hoping that the cameras are working, because this is where we get into the circumstances. The individual, the mother, who they think wrote the note, is asking the state to look after the child because they didn't have the means to look after the child. Now, that is very important. A number of factors here, so I'm not going to just go out on a limb or a rant. One, there's a possibility that this individual, in terms of socioeconomic circumstances, simply couldn't look after the baby. Two, it could have been a case of rape, an unwanted child. That's another possibility that we must not rule out. Three, the other possibility, which we should not rule out, is the fact that there probably somebody wanted to have some fun, but was not mature enough to think about the repercussions or the responsibilities associated with having fun.
But I mean, all factors considered, the thing about it is that even if you didn't want the child, if the individual or the parents rather, as we don't know the circumstances, if they didn't want the child, then they could have simply give the child up for adoption, because there is that avenue by way of the Children's Authority, and so that could have been explored. But it's certainly not for us to cast any aspersions, but to really examine all the factors that would have led to this, and hopefully we can find the person who would have done this particular act.
I agree, whilst we shouldn't cast any aspersions, it's very important, because at the end of the day, people who are struggling, you're wondering whether or not they think or whether or not,
yes,
whether or not they feel as though there is an avenue of help, there is an avenue of hope. You mentioned the Children's Authority, but with recent reports coming about the conditions and the state of orphanages and care homes across the nation, maybe that is also a factor that people are stating, listen, I can't look after the child, even if I put it in a state institution, such as the San Fernando General Hospital, it's still going to end up in an orphanage under the care of the Children's Authority.
Eventually, that's the avenue that's in law. The child would end up with the state at some point, and so the child would end up in the care of the Children's Authority unless someone comes forward and it's said otherwise.
But then the other point, Camille, is that whether or not people think, whether or not they feel they have avenues to actually seek help. For example, what if, because you're right, we shouldn't cast any aspersions, but what if no mother in their right mind would ever abandon their child, right? Motherly instincts will tell you you don't abandon your child. At least we're assuming that is the case, right? We're assuming that is the case. But in this particular instance, in terms of socioeconomics, we have to also understand that there is now instances in which we are probably going to be seeing more of these cases happening, because I mentioned it last week, and I repeat it once more. If you notice now, there are a lot of mothers holding up Bristol board placards, asking for help, asking for money, indicating that they have these children to look after. If you can't give money, give grocery items. That is what is happening across Trinidad and Tobago right now. So there's a possibility that more of this can happen.
But yes, even in circumstances like that, I'm not going to advocate for people to do that. Certainly not. And I mean, this is not the first instance we're seeing of babies being found dumped. I mean, we've had children being found in the Sealots landfill before. The one in Claxton Bay as well. And so there are instances of this in the past. I don't know if any of these cases have ever been resolved. But the thing about it is that we certainly should not advocate for it, and it's about really and truly educating and the Children's Authority coming out and saying, here's what, there are avenues, you don't want the child, here's what, you can put the child up for adoption.
Certainly nobody's advocating for this to happen. By no means necessary do we wish for this to happen to any child at all. And I mean, we don't want any family to struggle at all. I think more than ever people also need to understand, because again, investigations will determine the cause behind this. They should be able to determine whom the mother was if security footage is working, if they actually have that in their possession. But this is the thing. We also have to understand that with our current state of affairs, we've actually not addressed this. We've actually failed to address this. You're right. Those cases that you just called, with respect to Claxton Bay and the Beetham landfill, I can't ever remember that being resolved.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I've never heard of the outcome of an investigation into one of those matters. You've had many people finding babies on the side of the road. It had an instance in Cuba a couple of years ago, and I've never heard of, okay, well, we found the parent or the child up for adoption. This is where the investigation is at. We just simply don't hear anything else. So hopefully this is not a case where it's going to end up being that being the result, that we found this child is found, they are put into the care of the state, and then we don't hear anything else afterwards.
The other issue that once more is raised, I raised it earlier, and also that should be part of the conversation now, as part of government discussions and as part of institutional discussion as well, such as the children's authorities, that how is it now that we deal with victims of, because I'm looking at it from all angles, so I'm not casting any aspersions, I'm just trying to analyze it from all angles. If we address the issue of pregnancy by rape, and that child is not wanted by the mother, how is it now that we deal with that? Is it that, okay, great, we just send the child to the children's authority as well, let them take care of it? That is also an issue, because, I mean, I'm not going to bring up the whole debate about abortion right now,
yeah.
but I'm just stating that is certainly another issue. And I also want to stress to individuals out there, as much as you may, whether or not to be idle-minded, or whether or not you see it as a necessity, or if you just want to have fun, however you'd like to phrase it or classify it, bringing a child into this world right now, you need to make sure that you have the ability to sacrifice everything for that child, right? You, especially now in these times, and I'm not talking about just Trinidad and Tobago, I'm talking about globally. Bringing a child into this world now is a far more greater responsibility than it was 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Certainly.
You know, so folks, I plead and I stress with everybody out there, you know, there are repercussions that goes with having fun or necessity, whatever you want to phrase it as. Make sure you're mature enough to recognize that and responsible enough. Ensure that. Because children are suffering.
But yeah, certainly. And even beside that, I think it's certainly for us to recommend to people out there, if it's a case where you've already had this child, that's not the, I don't think that's the avenue that you should explore in terms of dumping your child. That's not what we're advocating for at all. And I think people should make themselves aware of the different avenues that are available to them in the event that they don't want the child or the child is unwanted.
Especially if you are unemployed, you know, please, the education in terms of contraceptives as well. For a lot of topics,
there are a lot of things that can come out of this. I mean,
story.
The Ministry of Health has family planning. There's a family planning association on its own, so people can access these services to prevent instances like this.
Well, I really hope that more education is relayed to the public. But for now, I'm grateful that this individual was able to discover the baby. You know, thank God the baby is alive. It's in the care of the state right now, seeking medical attention, and police investigations will determine what led to this, if ever we get the results of that investigation, Camille, and if the CCTV footage is working. Folks, let's take a break on the program now. When we return, well, we continue the conversation this morning. Stay tuned to Talking Point.
Delivered nationwide. Kiss Enriched Bread.
Fill your day with love.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
I'm joined on set today with Dr. Chelsea Garcia. She's a palliative specialist as well as internal medicine doctor as well as hospice care.
Palliative is for anyone with serious illness, whereas hospice is for someone that may die in the next 6 months. Now, unfortunately, because people confuse the word palliative with hospice, we see a lot of patients presenting late in the course of their illness.
So the first part about holding out the stick is knowing how to hold it. You're only allowed to play with the flat side of the stick. So the ball is not allowed to hit the back of your stick whatsoever.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN Content Capital.
Good morning and welcome back to Talking Point. We will be speaking about, or we are rather speaking about finance this morning. And joining us we have former Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Mariano Brown. Mr. Brown, good morning and welcome to Talking Point.
Good morning.
So we want to look at the Central Bank's 2021 financial stability report. And
yes,
in that particular report, there were three main risks to the financial sector that was identified, and those being rising international interest rates, increasing cyber attacks, and sovereign concentrations in the banking sector and insurance sectors. What do you make of this report?
Well, I thought that the report was good coming from where we were. Identifying the risks, and I think the issue with regard to cyber attack takes on real significance given the fact that we had one conglomerate that has been affected recently, and this would be the Massey Group, in particular its stores. So it's not something that's far-fetched. This is something that's probably likely to happen again as we are part of the international network, and this is literally what has been taking place. But of greater significance, the interest rates risk to Trinidad and Tobago. That is really on the sovereign side, except for those companies which are, for example, leveraged in US dollars. In terms of the domestic sector, the interest rate scenario has been relatively quiet. Monetary policy has not really been used as a factor against inflation, and to some extent inflation relative to what is taking place in the rest of the world has been moderate. I think what is of significance is that the banks are pretty robust in terms of their capital ratios. One could argue that they are taking a very conservative position for quite some time, and therefore they're less affected. But I think the risk factor is also great for those what we'll consider to be medium-sized enterprises whose businesses have been affected by the downturn, and in particular the difficulties of COVID-19. I don't think that the report is very strong in terms of its analysis of that segment of the private sector. I think, and that is really where I think we need to pay attention to.
Mr. Brown, good morning. Thank you for joining us. You mentioned that the banks have taken a conservative approach. That is quite interesting, but isn't that in itself a risk if it's not willing or able to move from a position to actually try and adapt to the times?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. The biggest risk for banks within the financial network over time has always been the issue of credit risk. And by credit risk, I mean the capacity, or if you want, failure to properly evaluate its customers. And therefore, if a significant percentage of its customers go bad, then by definition, that will affect the bank's performance and its capital ratios. I think that the banks have been very conservative with regard to their lending policies, and in so doing have largely been able to deal with that risk. It's still a factor, but still they're well within their capital ratios where that is concerned, and they're well capitalized. On the other side of the fence, the banking model that has been adopted by Trinidad and Tobago has changed significantly over the last 25 years. And what do I mean by that? Banks make a substantial portion of their money from fee income. Whereas in the past, banks were what you would call leveraged lenders, meaning that they borrowed money from the public and lent to other areas, and their fee income was more, how shall we call it, it was much less. Now, literally everybody pays banking fees, everybody. And the banks have converted more to the North American model, which in essence, banks are charging you for the cost of managing your money or taking care of your money, so that you would find that most accounts carry some kind of fee. And if you have an account with a limit, you probably find that you'll be paying 3 sets of fees. One, a credit fee on an ongoing basis. Another one would be some sort of accounting fees just for basically running, and then you pay transaction fees off of every electronic transaction that you make. They may be small, but at the same token, it's continuous. And on that basis, the banks have literally shifted their model more to a fee-based model than it is an interest income model. And in so doing have isolated themselves or reduced their credit risk. This doesn't mean to say that they don't have it. It just means that they have mitigated it to a much bigger extent than they used to 25 years ago.
Certainly. Mr. Brown, the report stated that the financial stability risk in Trinidad and Tobago were tempered as the effects of the pandemic appear to subside over 2021 and early 2022. Obviously, the word tempered there obviously would raise some sort of red flags to any person who reads the report and is concerned about the financial sector in Trinidad and Tobago. What to do? What or how can we now look at this where it says that it was tempered? So obviously, if we had gone into the height of the pandemic, continued well over into 2022, then we would have seen a much worse happenings within our financial sector. What do you make of that particular line within the report?
Well, you have to look at it in the context that Trinidad and Tobago has been in a depression for 6 years. And when I mean depression, I mean literally the size of GDP has declined, and therefore you would find that in large measure, many companies, many organizations, many SMEs would have found that their business model has changed and that their level of sales have declined. When your sales decline, then you have to adjust your operations, cut your expenses. So the country has been in adjustment mode for a period of 6 years. COVID came literally just on top of that adjustment period. It was like an additional blow, so that there would be many organizations where their revenues would have been hard hit. So tempered means that the effect of COVID came on top of an already long economic spiral downwards. So that would have made things worse. So the financial stability report is looking at it from that perspective, and the fact that with the rollback of the social dislocation measures, the closures and so on, we've now returned to a more normal level of business activity. And that has also been reflected in a better fiscal position on the part of government, which has, in a sense, raised the performance of the economy a bit. And that's the concept in which, or that's the environment in which the word tempered is used. So it's been beneficial, so to speak. It could have been worse, but it has been measured. I think that's the context in which the word tempered is used. So overall, I mean, as the way reports go, it's a report doesn't say that everything is great, but it does say that we're in a good position. As I indicated to you, financial stability report should also include an evaluation of the public borrowing, and public, I mean companies as companies. What their borrowing position is. Are their balance sheets well leveraged? They have borrowing capacity, or alternatively, are they the situation where they're dependent on the banks, and therefore any kind of tightening in the situation could mean a worsening in their credit terms, and therefore a decline in their performance. And similarly, on the part of the public, is the public over leveraged? A private and business individuals borrow money too.
Yeah.
So as the level of borrowing at the individual level and the personal level also been exacerbated? Are they operating on the basis of cash flow, or are they depending on bank borrowings? Now, the financial stability report is silent in those areas, I think. So we have to presume there are two options. One, that they haven't done the kind of surveys that they need to in that area, or two, there's nothing to worry about. So it depends on whether you're an optimist or pessimist. But I think given everything else, and you have to listen in terms of what the background is on the street, over the last 2 years, people have complained that they've been badly affected by the lockdowns. And businesses have complained to that effect too, as well as individuals. There's been a decline in terms of their economic performance. So I would say that given where we are, along depression, then COVID, I think people are at the bottom end of the ladder, but things are not, we're not in a dire strait. I mean, the people can survive.
Well, certainly. I mean, people are surviving right now. But Mr. Brown, on that particular issue where you mentioned borrowing capacity, the central bank report also states the large debt held by the private sector. Interestingly, it also mentions high domestic interest rates to counter higher inflation rates, which could present a near-term threat to financial stability and may be triggered by a new risk, which is rising international interest rates in itself. With interest rates rising to counter inflation and also private debt rising as well, isn't that in itself stating that the borrowing capacity of the private sector is now being depleted simply because they may not be able to afford to borrow money?
Well, the higher interest rates mean, of course, it attacks your cash flow position. Higher interest means that you have to pay it back. And I think the bank there's a signal in this. The signal is that if the inflationary situation in Trinidad gets rough, then the banking sector, in particular the central bank, is likely to resort to using monetary policy, and in particular the interest rate mechanism as a way to balance the situation and ease demand. The one thing that we know, we've always had an overhang of deposits in the system, meaning that the domestic borrowing rate has been relatively modest over the period, and that there's been surplus money in a sense in circulation. That's one of the reasons why the tender bonds have been used to pull money out of the system to prevent the system from overheating. So in those circumstances, I think that's a signal that should the inflation rate in Trinidad go beyond a particular point, the point has not been identified. There's no target rate of interest or no targeted inflation rate that the central bank has announced, but I think it is sending out a signal that if we were to be affected, we've seen interest rates, for example, in Europe somewhere in the region of 10%. We've seen interest rates in North America somewhere in the region of 8 or 9%, which are considerably high, are very high in relation to their target rates, which is somewhere in the region of 2%. Right now, our inflation rate has been modest over the last 5 years, but we have seen an uptick in the inflation rate, which is carrying it closer to 5, somewhere thereabouts. Right, so in those circumstances, I think the central bank is signaling that it may be required to use the interest rate, and the interest rate mechanism is a way of tempering demand. Mm-hmm. And in so doing, those institutions which are highly leveraged, i.e., they are well borrowed, they would be affected, and that's the risk that they're identifying moving forward.
Now, I know you pointed out the issue of increasing cyber attacks, which the report states is one of the three main things that we should focus on, especially coming over, now going over into 2023. And it says, the report states, the issue of increasing cyber attacks, just now, let me just get one moment. The issue of increasing cyber attacks, the central bank says the continued drive for digitalization to improve access to financial services has also expanded the attack surface. So it has essentially given more entities who are doing that sort of operation the opportunity for increased cyber attacks. I know you pointed that out when we opened. And it also states that a rise in cyber incidents domestically and regionally was noted over 2021. Further, recent cyber attacks on regional conglomerates draw attention to the potential for systemic liquidity risk arising from interconnections. How do we address this particular issue, especially now with our drive towards further digitalization?
Well, I think it's a signal that the private sector has to increase its surveillance capacity and its defense and the number of defensive measures that are used. I think that one would find that internet banking in particular has been on the rise. In some instances, the banks literally have been turning you away from their door. And that's why I'm saying the banking model has changed. So, and hence the rise in the dependence, if you want, on electronic banking, and therefore fee income has risen. Now, if our domestic conglomerates or regional conglomerates have been under attack, then by definition it's almost more than likely that our financial institutions will also suffer that difficulty or that risk. And in so doing, it means that the John Q. public who is using or depending on, if you want, internet banking services, which would both be corporate sector as well as individuals, would be subject to a higher level of threat. And on that basis, therefore, the defensive measures which have to be used by the institutions have to be far more robust. Now, there's some banks are stronger than others in that regard. I'm not going to call any names. Some banks, you will find that the security measures are very, very robust. You have to change your passwords on an ongoing basis, and that's the reason why that is taking place, because they themselves are preparing for that risk, and they are probably subject to attack in ways in which the public is not aware. Most employees at the bank wouldn't be aware. It's just that the people who are operating in the background who understand what these risks are. So it's a very live factor. When you're operating in Trinidad and Tobago, or when you're operating on the internet, there's no such thing as where you are in the world. You are part of a world traffic situation. And that always exposes you to greater risk. And if the move towards digitalization, it allows for a certain freedom of activity, ease of range of movement, and so on. But it also comes with risks. We in Trinidad and Tobago have considered crime to be crime on the street, guns. But there's also, because of digitalization across the world and the increasing use of the internet, crime has also morphed. People can attack your accounts, people can attack your identity crimes, and that's what it's about. When you attack a person's identity, by definition, you're attacking their financial wherewithal, because you can then use the identity to basically pursue transactions. So crime, in all of its facets, does not go away. People always look for opportunities, and there will always be an element amongst us which are criminal. And in this particular instance, because of the internet is international, it means that this is not about domestic cyber attack. This is about international cyber attacks, which by definition will be more robust. So I think the central bank is sending out a signal. It can't change the surveillance or security devices in individual organization, but it can insist on the organizations that it regulates, that they ensure that they put enough defensive measures in position to be able to solve it. That's the reality of the report. It's raising a risk factor. It is telling the public and the individuals it regulates, fellas, you have to keep your house in order. And I think that's the way we have to look at it.
Certainly. Well, Mr. Brown, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning. There's obviously a lot more that we can talk about, but for time, that's where we'll have to conclude. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence once more, and keep well.
Thank you very much. You
Thank
too.
you.
All the best. Former Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Mariano Brown, giving us his insights into the Central Bank 2021 Financial Stability Report. Folks, we have to take a break on the program now. We're on routine this morning. We'll just wrap up this particular discussion, and we will conclude this morning's topics with a continued conversation surrounding agriculture here in TNT. Stay tuned.
Multiple sclerosis is a chronic inflammatory condition affecting the central nervous system.
Being with someone who has MS, you have to have a lot of patience. You have to have a lot of faith.
It's difficult to diagnose until I was even in Mount Hope Hospital for about 3 weeks.
See, I was sitting here, and all of a sudden it feel like somebody trying to pound some needles or a nail on their foot. That is so painful.
Unfortunately, there is no cure for MS at this point in time.
MS creeps upon you. So I had one attack, and by 4 years after that, I had the second attack, and then they said yes to MS.
The continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sport?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Points here on WESN. Thank you very much once more to the former Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Mariano Brown, for his presence as we analyze the Central Bank 2021 Financial Stability Report. Kemil, well, there's a lot more that we can get into, but
certainly. I mean, time. I mean, time. But there's certainly a lot more that we can get into when you speak about finance and the economy, especially from a Trinidad and Tobago context.
Oh, certainly. For a small 12-island republic, there's a lot to talk about. But hopefully we can continue that discussion tomorrow with the former Minister of Finance, Carolina Teixeira, when she joins us. I want to take a sidestep now to another major problem here in TNT, and that's agriculture. I say it's a problem because, listen, 25% by 2025, TNT having to do its part. That is going to be interesting because that's not a lot of time considering where our agricultural sector is. That is just 2 years, about just over 2 years away So, whilst I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic, all stakeholders need to be on board. Private sector, public sector, and of course, any organizations with the sector.
And that's the call that Jervis Warner would have made while he was delivering his address at the expo. And it's certainly for everyone to come on board. It really cannot be a government-led initiative. It needs to be that all private sector entities are on board, from those who do agro-processing to those who do farming to all the different entities need to be involved.
And that's exactly what the president of the Cooperative Republic of Ghana, Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali, also advocated for. He says, you know, this is not just a one-man's game where it's only for governments to use as well. So you saw there was some level of synchronization in the messaging, you know, from everybody at the forum, all leaders. But then we take a look at what we mentioned yesterday with respect to the protest that happened outside. And one member of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago was actually a part of that process with members of the Opposition United National Congress. Now, we heard from that individual who is a director of the ASTT. He was on WESN's AM Prime yesterday morning as a guest. Then, at around the same time of that interview, the president of the ASTT, Dara Rampasad, was also on another station, sharing his thoughts about what transpired. So, before we go any further, let's just give you a hint, just basically a genesis of what this individual, the director, Mr. Safraz Ali, had to say.
Safraz Ali, did not agree with the participation inside the expo because of the reasons that I would have given just now there. And yeah, I feel strongly about it. $8 million the government utilized to host that event when we have a plethora of problems outside here for farmers, right? We have land tenure issues, farmers can't get leases on time, we have infrastructure, serious infrastructure issues outside here. They have a number of irrigation channels blocked.
So that was the director of, well, one of the directors of the ASTT, Safraz Ali, and he made it clear. He says, Safraz Ali disagreed with the Agri-Investment Forum and Expo 2 for many reasons, mostly because farmers are suffering. There is poor irrigation, poor infrastructure, poor facilities, and $8 million was spent on the Agri Forum. Kemgil, initial thoughts on this?
Well, I, like you, saw the protest action that took place on Friday whilst the expo was going on, in terms of whilst the leaders were delivering their different speeches. And we now have turmoil within the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago. Once again, as I was mentioning to you whilst we were on break, there was issues a couple of years ago, and now we're seeing issues once again, because he's saying he disagrees while the president is saying something completely different. And so if it's that within the sector, the people who are responsible somewhat for things being done within the sector are at loggerheads, then what we're going to get in terms of output isn't necessarily what we want for the sector.
Exactly. Now, especially with the ASTT, you know, every individual has a right to agree or disagree. He's a director, and no problem with him disagreeing with it. But him actually working with the opposition, and the opposition getting involved in this process, and the Monday Night Forum, he was also mentioned by the opposition leader. Yes. Isn't that's wrong in my opinion?
Well,
because
I mean, everyone is entitled to their own political views in their private side, right? But I mean, this sector, this agricultural society, I expect to be something that's apolitical, and that is actually for the farmers and not necessarily for those who are in government, in terms of they are the ones charged with lobbying on behalf of farmers. And if it's that you all are now siding with an opposition or siding with a government, then what we're essentially going to get out of you is you're going to be singing from a different songbook, because you're not going to be singing from the songbook that your colleagues are singing from.
Because you're right, the society needs to remain apolitical. And if Mr. Ali has his own political views, no problem with that. If he has his private views in relation to the STT, no problem with that as well. But you shouldn't politicize the organization, which is essentially what he sought to do. Bringing that back, regardless of whether or not this was the UNC, who is in the opposition and he sided with UNC, or the PNM, or the NTA, or the PDP, or the PEP, or the MSJ, whatever political party. Yeah, listen, a history of political parties in TNT, we'll be surprised at the number of political parties that we have had. But it doesn't matter who he sided with. He should not have done what he did in terms of bringing politics into the organization. Once more, there is dispute. At least there seems to be dispute, because we do have a clip from Mr. Darren Ampersad yesterday. He was on another station. It coincided with the interview with Safraz Ali on AM Prime. And this is what he had to say, not only in relation to the protest, but also in relation to the Agri-Investment Forum and Expo 2. Let's take a look at this.
Well, what took place there is that member of the organization took it upon themselves with other members of a certain political party, right, to take action on the said day and have that protest there. However, the comments made there didn't come from the Agriculture Society, nor was the protest orchestrated by the Agriculture Society. However, the logo seemed to have been used there to get the voice outside there.
Let's just take a look at, there's also another clip from Mr. Darren Ampersad present. Let's take a look at that.
We know that there are issues in agriculture that needs to be attended to, but I don't think that was the place and time for such a action to take place, because at the same time, we saw where the government is making an effort into investment into agriculture. So as I say, the ASTT fully supports expansion, improvement, and investment in terms of agriculture, and we'll still give the event an A, as we also participated in the said event.
Well, that was Darren Ampersad, the president of the ASTT, and he made it clear that that particular member took it upon themselves to align themselves with a particular political party, of which we now know is the United National Congress, to have that protest. He says that those comments and that action did not come from the ASTT. He said it didn't represent the views of the ASTT, because what he then went on to say is that we actually give this event an A, because we support any investment or progress that is being made in terms of agriculture.
You see, and that's the thing about it. You have the president saying one thing, and then you also have a director from within the society saying something completely different, and now, as you mentioned, politicizing the issue. And as he mentioned as well, you have now come on openly using the society's logo on national television, protesting with an opposition member of parliament. As you mentioned, it doesn't matter if it's an opposition member of parliament or some other party. The thing about it is that the society should not descend into what it has descended into, and we know of the issues within the society over the years. And now that this particular president has now come into the society and he's attempting to clean up especially the image of the society, you now have another member siding with the opposition. And that's not a good look for the society at all. And as he mentioned, yes, they should have started in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of what they are attempting to do within the agricultural sector, but at the same time, they are still grateful for the fact that the government is hosting this particular Agri-Expo, and they want to now push the agricultural sector even further by way of their initiative of 25% by 2025.
By the actions of the director, again, I cannot stress, for those who may want to misinterpret my words or even the words of my colleague next to me, everyone is very much open. Nothing is wrong to having your own opinion, political, non-political, whatever it may be, always open to agree or disagree. However, as a collective society, especially when you are protesting or arguing using the platform of that society, and you're stating it on behalf of the society, that is wrong, because Mr. Ali did not practice democracy wholeheartedly there. He practiced democracy in one sense in terms of my freedom of expression, whilst utilizing my society, forgetting the democracy and the opinions and the collective decisions of the entire board of the ASTT. What this does now is, in a sense, if the government wanted to be, let's just say, spiteful or vindictive, simply enough, they could not take the ASTT seriously, or the position of the ASTT seriously, stating, listen man, what is this? You know, Furthermore, it also jeopardizes the ESTT from not only from a local perspective, but this was a CARICOM event. This was a regional event. If there is dispute within the ESTT, and there seems to be dispute within the ESTT, once again, what is the strength of that organization going forward, and what is the collective opinion or the collective position of the ESTT going forward?
Well, I think the president would have, the president spoke yesterday, and he would have articulated their position quite clearly. And it's that even when I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, well, just last week here on Talking Point, on One-on-One, what he said is that he has attempted now to clean up the society. And so what we're seeing once again is the society is once again descending into things that they don't want it to descend into, because we know of the issues over the years with the elections and how long that particular president sat there and what was done for the society and what was not done for the society. And once again, you have these issues arising in the society at a very, very critical point, not just within the agricultural sector, but for the economy of Trinidad and Tobago.
But also, let's be fair, Kenya. Since we focused on Safraz Ali for a bit and his actions, let's focus a bit now on Dara Prasad. Is what he stated there the collective position of the STT? Yes, he is the president. He is the president, we understand that. So through his words, we have to take it that that is, of course, the position. But overall, we haven't heard from other members or directors. So we're only assuming that there is harmony within the organization enough that they can make a united stand, a united front.
Well, that's certainly it, because we don't know what's being said behind closed doors. We don't know what their meetings are like, and we don't know what is the collective position, as you mentioned, because how there may be other people who are supporting Mr. Safraz Ali and probably wish to be at the protest action, but because they know of the same thing that we're speaking about now, they opted not to attend the protest, but they are certainly probably in support of his actions. I mean, yes, I do understand the fact that the agricultural sector is in need of some level of further equipping them to bolster their production and their export and whatever else, but I think the way in which they're attempting to raise their voice and to signal their rejection for this particular expo and the need for the government to start in Trinidad and Tobago is not the right way.
But do you think that he does? Okay, it's not the right way. Did he have a point, though, when he said that 8 million was spent on this forum and expo, when that 8 million could have been put to better use? Well, they've not seen a serious investment in agriculture, and the governments are the ones now advocating for private sector investments as well.
I mean, well, he is correct in that regard. I mean, the money could have been spent better, all things considered. But at this point, if we're finally seeing a start within the sector, let's just be grateful. I think that's...
Well, let's hope it is a start. As I said, I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic, 25% by 2035. I think that's $1.4 billion US that they're looking to cut. Fingers crossed, you know. But folks, what we have to do is that we have to take a break now here on Talking Point, and when we return, well, we'll open up the phone lines and we'll continue our discussions. Stay tuned.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Man gunned down in Port of Spain. Acting top cop says investigations ongoing into reports went unnoticed in child's death. Men in tactical wear staged robberies, and internationally, nearly 100 dead in Afghanistan floods. Now for the details. A shooting in Port of Spain has left one man dead and 2 others wounded. Dead is Avery Weeks. The trio was shot at the Harp in Port of Spain. Weeks was taken to the hospital but died on arrival. The 2 others are being treated. Weeks was said to be part of the Rasta City gang. Acting Commissioner of Police McDonald Jacobs says investigations are ongoing into whether reports of abuse leading up to the death of 7-year-old Hope Rasheer were made 3 weeks prior to her death.
We will respond soon concerning that report. However, by the way, I was saying that some report was made to the Children's Authority, so we need to really find out the truth behind it to see what really went wrong so it will not be repeated.
Little Hope was found dead by an imam on Friday night after her mother reported to him that the child was unresponsive at their 10-by-10 wooden home. The suspect is said to have been mentally unstable. Police reports, however, indicate that no unusual behavior has been exhibited since the suspect has been in custody. Men clad in tactical wear have robbed a Massey store at gunpoint on Sunday. Reports say Massey Gulf View was robbed around 5 a.m. on Sunday, and the manager and staff present were held at gunpoint. An undisclosed amount of cash was also taken. Meanwhile, a man in tactical wear was also said to be a part of a robbery at the residence of the owner of Armay Hardware. This incident also took place on Sunday. In international news now, flash flooding has killed at least 95 people, injured hundreds of others, and swept away thousands of homes in Afghanistan, authorities in the crisis-hit country said on Tuesday. The deaths occurred across 10 provinces over the past 10 days. The extreme weather also comes as neighboring Pakistan experiences relentless flooding. The Disaster Management Authority said floods have killed 820 people since mid-June, with nearly 320,000 houses damaged or destroyed and 129 bridges affected. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for watching.
Alright folks, before we open up the phone lines, we need to address this issue of individuals being robbed by criminals who are now wearing tactical uniforms. I've heard of this before, but this is just becoming more and more prevalent. We saw a similar situation, I think on Sunday, in Chase Village. I did see the video, right? They actually stopped the car. The car was even rolling when they continued to rob the family of cash and jewelry. And we saw ESA at Massey stores in Laramie.
But there's even a part before that where they not just robbed the car, but they robbed the car because they couldn't escape with the family's truck. So what they had done is that they came in front of the gate shouting, "Police, police." The family member that was home called her father, and the father then came home. So they were robbed in front of the gate. They then got access into the premises, robbed them of valuables, tied up the man's wife and all of that. When they couldn't escape with the truck, they robbed the car that was passing on the road. I think that's what most people saw, but most people didn't see the part from within the house. But that's not the issue, you know. The issue is, as you're going to say, the prevalence of people being able to get tactical wear and
as far as I'm aware, if you're wearing any, you know what we refer to as army pants, camouflage or tactical gear, it's illegal.
Yes.
That has been banned. People are now getting tactical uniforms, which if I'm not mistaken, I think you could access that very easily.
Yeah, if I want to leave the set now and go and buy it,
yeah, you could access it very easily. And then I can't see why it is so difficult for them to get printed or stitched or sewed TTPS patches, right? I can't see what's the difficulty in that. So now you don't even know. No, the lady did the right thing by not going out.
Yes.
And by calling her he says her uncle.
Her father.
Her father, right? Lady did the right thing there. I mean, we've said it multiple times. Don't go outside unless you are absolutely sure. Don't open your gate, even if the individual is calling police. All right? Not at all. It's just unfortunately circumstances. We've seen it at Massey stores yesterday in Laramine.
Yes. Yeah.
Massey stores in Laramine, the manager and a couple of employees were robbed 5 o'clock in the morning by people wearing tactical uniform. Again, what is going on? I can't wait to hear from the Commissioner of Police.
Well, what he did say is that they are now going to investigate in terms of speaking to companies who not just manufacture, but companies who sell these types of gear, so that they can look back to see when this would have been purchased. But I don't think they could achieve anything.
Like I said, I can't wait to hear from the Acting Commissioner of Police speak some bloody sense, as well as the Minister of National Security. Folks, let's open up the phone lines now. I mean, we've kept it closed because of this particular issue. We've had to discuss it. But call us now here on Talking Point. Join us in the discussion. Let us hear from you. You see this issue about tactical gear, people getting it so easily. This is a serious issue. I know some stores, or let me not even say some stores. At least I know one store in particular that it crossed its T's and dots its I's. Let me make sure I say that correctly, right? I know of a store that did that and does that actually. Still, this does not necessarily have to be distributors. This could be coming in through reports as well, the same way the guns are coming in.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. I can go to the US and get some tactical gear.
Camille, stop saying that. Camille, just
because
saying
that's the reality of how simple it is if we're being real. And that's how they would have been able to access it. Let's not, beat around the bush with the issue.
So the issue is not only the stores, and the issue is we spoke, the Acting Commissioner spoke about the port. I just saw you have me so you're going to go to the States. Camille.
No, I'm just saying people can't do that. I'm not saying to do it because you see the thing about it is that having the gear isn't illegal. If you have police owned items, that's where the illegal thing comes in. So you can own gear. I mean, security companies have tactical wear as part of their uniforms, but to the ordinary citizen, what are you doing with police patches? Because that's what the men had in Chase Village. They had police patches, not just on the sides, but they also had on their back.
Exactly. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a serious issue that is once more evolving here on the forefront in terms of crime here in TNT. If you were to just go, actually, right now, one particular daily newspaper, and this is just one, I can imagine what it is on the others, and you were to scroll through the headlines, then all you're seeing is death. HCC worker shot dead in San Juan. Laventil man killed in drive-by shooting. 2 men killed on the way to work from Arima. Then they have this Massey stores robbery. Very finally, interesting enough, Brazil donates sanitizer to Trinidad and Tobago. That's the one story that breaks up all the headlines about death and crime here.
You also have the commissioner saying one man can't solve TNT's crime. So I think he's giving away himself there.
Imagine the Acting Commissioner of Police making such statements like that. We know that one man cannot solve TNT's crime. But at least try and fix the TTPS first. At least try and fix... I find it easier for this man to come out and make all these weird statements.
Outlandish.
I don't... the nature of criminality and guns in TNT, where people have access to guns, but they may not be trained to use it like TTPS officers. We understand that. We totally understand that. But these are things that you don't have to come and explain to us. Saying one man... Listen, the moment that you come and you tell me policy that you as Acting Commissioner of Police has implemented, that you formulated, and the results of such, wonderful. That'd be great. The moment you come and you tell me that we have solved these cases, that'd be wonderful. That'd be great. I don't hear any of that happening. None of that happening at all. And you come in and making statements like one man cannot solve crime? Boss,
Just leave it.
Camille.
But yes, the phone lines are open, so please call into the program and share your views and your thoughts on all that was discussed this morning, and if you have anything else to share with us.
But continuing that conversation now, this situation associated here in Trinidad and Tobago, bandits in uniforms, man dead, counseling for the family of the 7-year-old girl, that investigation is still continuing. It is unfortunate that every day I have to report to you these stories. It's unfortunate every day we have to have such discussions. We don't really have much of a choice. That is what the newspaper headlines are dominated with. You know, I can speak to you about fiscal and monetary policy as much as I want to. I could speak about NGC seeing a $4.7 billion turnaround. I can speak to you about all this wonderful news and whatnot. It doesn't actually change the situation on the ground.
Correct.
It doesn't. So as much as there is probably some good news out there, and as much as there's some things to be grateful about, it makes no sense many of the times, because at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to happen next when you walk out that door. Yeah. Often enough I say it. After this program, I walk out onto Gatiga Street. I don't know, this may be my last episode of Talking Point, it may not be, but that's just the nature of how things are going now.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people should take stock on, because of the fact that we do need to be aware of our safety, but we do have our first call on the line. Shogunas, good morning.
Hello, gentlemen.
Good morning, Professor.
You asked what is causing all this crime. I have explained this to you on many occasions, but you always forget.
No, I know what's causing all this crime.
Order.
Uh-huh.
We do not enforce our laws, and we are tying that to annual administrative reports, which nobody publishes. That is it. And the thing about one man, the people have I never hear anybody say that, yes, except the people who are not doing the work. Because it is not one man, it is the government, really the country, but the country elects a government to do that. And how they do this again is through their annual administrative reports, and they're not doing it. That is the problem on that. We had the central bank report, and I heard Mariano Brown talking something there, I don't know what he's talking about. Talking about historically the banks used to pay interest, now they charge it. When banks started off, they used to charge people to keep the money. It is only afterwards, by attracting a lot of people money, they started to lend it out, and when they got to make a profit on that, then they start to pay interest. And that is the cause of the problem. We had a very strong system here, and we destroyed it. I went into the income tax part with you, but we used to deal with what we call unearned income in a more draconian, by the way, than earned income. And we changed that around. And you end up with excess liquidity in the bank, which means they have a certain amount of money there that they can't lend. And that is the cause of the problem. Any questions, gentlemen, before my 2-minute speech?
No, Professor, I don't have any questions for you.
Okay. What about your partner? You have a nice program. I enjoy watching it.
Thank you very much.
You probably should take some questions. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. It's you, one-on-one, boy. Huh? One-on-one's doing good. I have a call on the line with us from Arima. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
In light of this issue with this police uniform, right, that we gawking at and we in amazement, how many times have the police seized ammunition that was issued by the TNT regiment?
Yes.
Among other things.
Mm-hmm.
It highlights a bigger problem that we have. Yeah, and something has to be done about it. Now, I want to bat for the commissioner here.
Sure.
Because there's about 6,500 of them, the police, 1.5 million people. And I believe that the police service is overworked. And pretty soon some of them are going to be suffering from mental health issues. I think they need more recruits into this country. And we also need to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hard in terms of things that we would have tolerated in the past. I remember last time I called and talk about the items coming into the country. Illegal cigarettes, scratch bombs. Next day on the news, I heard they had a raid on our establishment, and this is what was found. The police need additional manpower, they need additional resources. We, the people, have to change our behavior. Yeah. We have to change our behavior. And we also have to demand more from our leaders.
Certainly.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much,
caller. Thank you. We do have Diego Martin on the line. Diego Martin, good morning.
Hello, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Yes, I just want to comment on that robbery there. People who dressed up like police and whatever the case may be. I was watching that carefully, and that happened since Saturday night, actually. And we haven't heard from the Prime Minister or the National Security Minister. This is a serious, serious thing. I mean, I watched those guys and them. They may not be police, but those people are well trained. They have to belong either to the army or the police. Because I watched the debate event about that there, and to perfection. The way they drummed and scaled that fence so easily, and the way they set up all their arm in their hands, it's very, very professional. It's a very frightening thing that's happening in this country.
Extremely frightening.
And you're not hearing from the Prime Minister or the National Security concerning these things. What is going on in this place? That is, people must be terrified. People are, I mean, recently I normally on a Saturday morning go out and read my newspaper in my yard and so on and thing, and I talk about Blue Range. And I saw a guy walk up the street there, so I got up and looked at him, a stranger, well dressed, and my daughter lives a little higher up than me. It's a very short street. The guy walked back down and just raised up his shirt, and he had a gun in his waist.
Yeah.
And that was the end of my, I never go back outside and sit down and read any papers again, so this country, I don't know, boy, and you need to hear from the people at the top. What, give us some sort of comfort. We're not getting that.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my call, and just call to express my disgust for this country now. I'm really fed up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and quite an unfortunate situation there.
This caller from Diego Martin calls in often. It's always been very positive.
Yes, certainly.
So for him to say that I've called to express my disgust says a lot. But it ties back into what the caller from Marima also mentioned. Because you're right, I don't expect to hear from the Prime Minister on issues like this. But I do expect to hear from the Minister of National Security. Because just as how he came out and he spoke about scrap iron dealers.
2 weeks in a row.
Right? 2 weeks in a row. And he mentioned that it is an issue of national security. He mentioned that. He said this is an issue of national security. People obtaining tactical gear, police patches, that's also an issue of national security.
Yeah.
We should address the nation on this particular issue, but I don't expect anything from Fitzgerald Hines.
We do have San Fernando on the line. San Fernando, good morning.
Hello, good morning, caller.
Hey, gentlemen, morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As Camila was saying, you see tactical gear. It is very easy to get tactical gear into this country because our surveillance of things coming in is a lot to be desired. As one. The other thing is this: if you look at that robbery at those two places where they have tactical gear, if you go back a little in the past, we have had these tactical gear people with pool operators, if they are professionals, surface in how would I put it? And they just surface and then they disappear. It happened with the robbery at Piaco where they robbed the money that was going to Tobago. You all remember that?
Yes.
Money that was going to Tobago.
Yeah.
It happened again on the highway where they ran into the truck and took the money from it. So there seems to be something going on there that the police needs to be aware of. However, another thing is the gentleman from Arima mentioned that ammunition from the army seems to be popping up.
Yeah.
I asked Mr. Dillon that question when he was Chief of Defense Staff because it was happening. It has been happening since then, and I know for a fact that the army do not have a proper check and balance for ammunition under their purview. When I made that accusation to Mr. Devan, he chastised me.
And that is something that should be checked on a daily basis.
And that, look, it's still happening.
Yeah.
So that means there is some issue there where you're seeing these things popping up when the police make a raid, you're getting ammunition from that was sent to the army.
Yeah, because you remember, Caller, very recently there was a murder. I think it took place, if I'm not mistaken, in Laventil or Morva, and they found regiment bullets at the scene.
Just over.
That's right. So they need to keep a check. I keep saying that since Zealand was chief of defense staff, so you could imagine how many years that was.
Yeah.
The last thing is, I have been looking to get some information. I haven't been able to find any information with the Ministry of Planning and Development, Ministry of Works, with respect to what are the plans that we have to combat climate change. I am not seeing anything real. You're seeing floods, we're seeing then because we have extreme heat, and I'm not hearing that I could access any plan by the government trying to say this is what we plan to, how we plan to deal with climate change.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you all could find something, or at least somebody would be able to come out and say something about it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Caller.
Thank you. Claxton Bay, good morning.
All right, we sorry lost the caller from Claxton Bay. Caller from San Fernando, that last point that you made, very, very pertinent point, because we could, as much as we could attend COP26, we can be a signatory to the Paris Climate Accord and the Kyoto Protocol. All that is involved. Great, whatever, you're right. But I can tell you what the response from the government is going to be. That is not the responsibility of those two ministries, the Ministry of Works and Transport and the Ministry of Planning and Development. That falls under the Ministry of Agriculture. That will fall under Land and Fisheries, that particular division. That's not going to fall under us at all. At one point in time, we had a Ministry of Land and Marine Affairs.
Yes, and a Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources.
Yes.
And
well, the water
that's
resources
when things were
part,
split up. There was a Ministry of Transport at one point, a Ministry of Works alone. And
but so to me, caller, I hear you. I agree with you. But I'm telling you, that's what they're going to say. Planning and development. Works and transport, no, that's not our business. We have other things to deal with. Talk to Qasim Hossain, or even to a certain extent Faris Arawi, Stuart Young, all those, perhaps. But we have a call on the line with us from Claxton Bay. Good morning.
Yeah, hi, good morning, Keaton and Pascal.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The last time I talked to you all about 2 weeks ago, something like that, I tell you that crime wasn't going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
The killing, right? That all that is because there are a lot of people who we have in this country who just get away very easy. You can't continue to have arms coming in containers and you're not finding nobody. You can't have warehouses with guns and nobody not responsible, because these warehouses and containers owned by somebody. Who is the owner? They must know. And the police have to get on top of the game and get serious about these things. You can't have these owners not knowing, so they could bring in all kind of things, rocket launchers, bombs, this, that, and never know. People get away too much by not knowing. They must have you must know. You have a container, you must know where you bring in. You have a warehouse, you must know. And that is the problem that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. We do have El Socorro on the line. El Socorro, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, morning, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Yes, this crime situation. I mean, you know what really irked me so deeply? Just a few days ago, wasn't it, in somewhere in Bmobile? Man just walked up to a man and chased another man near a basketball court. Children caught in the crossfire.
Yes.
Can't play even a basketball game. in a safe area, man. And I'm trying to find out why isn't the Ministry of National Security employing the Army on joint Army and police patrols. I don't understand that. The police need help. And why is not the Army out there helping the police? This is getting too ridiculous, man. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you, Paula. Well, I do know that there are patrols, but to the extent that we want to see it, there is.
I think the issue that you also have to understand is that the Army, the regiment, is being funded. People are receiving a salary. They should be more than able on a daily basis to assist the police. You don't want to have Army policing the streets, but you want Army assisting the police. Two different things, by the way. Can't explain it too much right now because we have a caller on the line with us from Mayaro. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I want to say that I am a farmer from Mayaro, and I look at different programs, and I want to say that you guys are doing a fantastic job with bringing up not only issues but solutions. And I will tell you something. We've been facing global warming, and we talk a lot about crime. And the food chain with crime leads with hungry belly. We have farmers in Mayaro who are suffering because of the global warming and also not having a direction clearly with the Farmers Association. We're using big name and big political association. But you know, gentlemen, that they are not reaching the ground of the farmers. I have tractor and equipment, and I am shut down.
Wow.
Because I cannot get workers at the chemical prices. And where do I sell the goods? We have a big project that is in Maruga with processing. The vision was shared for we to vote back for the PNM. We did support the line of the political vision, and it has not been implemented. So we are here struggling on the ground, and we are facing crime. Let us open up the marijuana and the hemp, and at least give us some guidance where we could go to build back the economy, because Guyana is moving forward. They're coming in Trinidad to take and invest into our energy sector to collaborate. Well, let us collaborate with other food productive line that we could own and move forward, because we're willing and we're waiting. We're waiting, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. In relation to that caller, unfortunately due for time,
I want to ask him a question, but we are almost out of time.
I will respond to that, and I do hear the phone line still going off, but time does not permit that, so please call in tomorrow. We do apologize, but we appreciate everybody's contribution, and also for everybody for being aware of the time and contributing in a timely manner. Thank you very much. In relation to your conversation about labor, that issue, Camille and I will address that tomorrow in Talking Point. A very important point, because as much as we speak about jobs, there is also an issue of getting labor in TNT.
Yes.
So in some instances, there actually are jobs available. There's an issue of getting labor, and there are many factors that we can certainly discuss tomorrow. In terms of marijuana and hemp, I don't know if we'll get an opportunity to discuss that tomorrow, but it's certainly a topic that we will explore, if not on Talking Point, certainly on One-on-One. But thank you very much to all our callers for their contribution, and Mr. Mariano Brown. Mr. Camille Pascal, a pleasure seeing you once more, sir, and for being here on Talking Point.
Yes, certainly it has been my pleasure.
And of course, tomorrow is another episode of One-on-One, so we're looking forward to that.
Yes, we are.
Don't give away any hints as to who you're talking to until tomorrow morning. But folks, that's it. I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Points. Remember, as ironic as it may be, today is a good day to have a good day. Say it with them, Camille. Let them know.
Today is a good day to have a good day.
We'll see you again tomorrow morning, folks. Bye-bye.
WESN